All right. Well, look, Darrell, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure.
It's really funny because, you were essentially my boss, and now I'm interviewing you. So
yeah, I'm the subject now.
You're the subject.
Very threatening.
Yeah. So it's a ton of fun. Like it's funny that I've gone full circle with Foundr and I can interview you because you've done some amazing things with Intrepid Travel. You've disrupted a market. You've built an amazing company. So yeah, look, thank you so much for taking the time.
Pleasure. I well remember being on the train one day and you're coming up to me and saying, "Hey Darrell, can I interview for your magazine?" I'm thinking, "You've got a magazine? Look at you now. Well done, mate. Go for it."
Well, thank you. So I guess the first question I ask every single person that comes on is, how did you get your job?
Immediately after university, I had a couple of jobs, but I have to say I was pretty bloody lousy at jobs. I was never a very good employee. So I guess you think, well, what am I going to do in life? What am I really good at? I'm quite a good traveller. Can I make a living out of travel? Can I make a business out of travel? Maybe. So you toss around ideas. Eventually you come up with an idea. Might have worked, might not have worked. I was lucky, it worked.
So take us back to the beginning, like that moment. You guys have been going for 22 years, 23?
27.
Oh, geez, 27 years. Yep. And this was your first startup?
Pretty much, yeah. Obviously I had lots of different things and whatnot, but it's kind of an interesting story in that my girlfriend at the time then became my wife and is still my wife.
Yeah.
I used to often come home with her with ideas for businesses, and
yes.
I'd be a crap employee somewhere, and I'd come home and I'd say, "Hey, I've got this fantastic idea. I reckon there's a huge opportunity in yabbies." And she looks at me and goes, "Yabbies," and for non-Australian listeners, they're kind of like a prawn thing. And I've never done any farming, and she just said, "You'll be a terrible, you can't farm. You've got no idea what it's all about. Disaster, shocking. Don't do it." 3 months later, come home. "Hey, I've got this great idea. I think we should import ultralights. They're new trendy things. They're going to be fantastic, take over the world, blah, blah, blah." Never quite did. But anyway, she goes, "You can't fly. It'll be a disaster. You'll kill yourself. You're not doing it." So didn't do it. And this kind of rolls on. And then eventually I had the idea for a travel company. And she goes, "You know what? That could be a good idea." And I thought, okay, she's saying it's a good idea. We're going. And it was a good idea. So there you go.
Awesome. And so you met your co-founder Manch at uni.
Yep.
Together.
Yep. Day one of university, in fact.
Day one of university. You went to Melbourne Uni, and you were still coming up with business ideas. Like, how long were you guys friends until you did your first trip? And tell us about that.
Yeah. So we did the same. We were in the same residential college together, doing the same course together. So we got to know each other pretty well. And then at the end of that 3 years, we went off traveling together, just for fun, as you do. Got back, he got jobs, I got jobs, blah, 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 partners, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we knew each other for, must have been 10 years, I think, before we started the business. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was really good because, we'd traveled a lot together. We'd never actually shared a house, but, did a lot of stuff together. And so we knew each other really well, and, the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you like. And so I think, starting a business, particularly with a co-founder, one of the biggest issues is that trust and knowledge about the other person, and we were kind of lucky that we were able to stress test that partnership outside of the business environment. So we've been super lucky. We've never had a crossword, the two of us, in 27 years of business.
Yeah,
it's
wow.
Not bad.
Yeah, again, that's really good. So you did some travel, and then how did the idea get conceived? Like, so you your partner Anna, and you thought it was an idea after you went on the trip?
Travel has been part of my life since I've been little. So my dad used to travel for his work, and we'd quite often tag on it. The family would tag on at the end of the holidays. So I guess it's always, and this is in the kind of the 60s when traveling as a kid was relatively unusual.
Yeah, okay.
And so I guess travel's always been something as a part of my life, and it's just something I'm loved, and through various trips before Intrepid. I'd go for a year off traveling through Asia, and then work for a couple of years, a year traveling through Africa, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, okay, wow.
So again, that's kind of unusual. And I suppose just I travelled in a certain style, a certain way, largely as an independent traveller. And Manch and I just had this conversation one day about all the advantages of travelling on your own, just with a Lonely Planet book, and away you go for a few months, and it's terrific. But also all the disadvantages, if you like, from a normal person's perspective. Like most people can't take 2 months or 3 months or a year or whatever to go traveling or don't. And so we just kind of thought, well, is there a way to combine all the advantages of independent travel in terms of being close to the culture and meeting people and using 100 different forms of transport, staying in all sorts of weird and wonderful places, really getting to know a culture, but doing it in a semi-organised way so that you can be efficient and do it as part of your annual leave. And so that was the idea. And we just kind of thought, well, we can do this, do this, do this, do this, put together a kind of a one-page business plan, if you like, and thought, yeah, that should work. And at that point, Anna goes, yeah, that probably will work.
Okay, gotcha.
So she was the first market testing, the first validation.
Gotcha. So I've always seen this photo of you, Manch.
Do we have to talk about that?
It's really interesting. I'm just curious. Like, I really want to go back to the moments. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So that's that photo in Africa, and I got beard and shorts on, and it's all kind of, someone said, you were the original hipster, weren't you? No. Anyway, so I guess you like anyone starting a business, you have an idea and you think what it could be, and you condense it into this business plan or model or whatever, and you start to think about distribution, you start to think about where you're going to get money from, but ultimately you haven't got a clue, have you? You don't know whether it's going to work, you don't know really even how to do it, you've possibly never even worked in the space before. Like, I never knew anything about the travel industry, didn't know anything, didn't know anyone, but got back from Africa and Manch went on and travelled a bit through the States. I got back and just started to work up the ideas in a bit more formal sense. Had a talk to a bank who didn't want to know about us, not surprisingly. They're not going to lend us money, why should they? So I managed to scrape up some money for myself in terms of the first period of time. Went and had a couple of contacts who kind of created a couple of contacts and just talked to them about the idea. People who should know, if you like. And it didn't go particularly well, to the degree that, they said, that's not going to work. Why would people do that? So basically we're talking about almost a glorified backpacking, if you like. And people just said, no, people won't want to do that. They want to go on a coach tour, or they want to stay in a 4-star, 5-star hotel or whatever. Why would they want to do that? That sounds weird. I'm thinking, oh, great. And 3 or 4 people said this to us. And so at that point, you kind of have that dichotomy almost, and you think, well, on the one hand, maybe it's a good idea and it'll work, just no one's thought of it. Or maybe it's a really dumb idea and we'll fall flat on our face and it'll be all over in 3 months or whatever. And again, I kind of went home and my all-knowing wife said, well, what's the worst could happen? If it doesn't work, you go and get a real job and that's fine, and at least you've got it out of your system. Or conversely, maybe it will work.
Yeah. That's what you said to me when I was thinking of leaving Intrepid.
That's right. I didn't want to lose you, Nate. Don't get me wrong. But you've got to get this thing out. You've got to give it a crack, don't you? What's the worst that can go wrong? I think I said, come back to us.
Yeah, that's right. It was the
I don't think you're going to be back.
I don't think so. So, I still think it's very hard. Like, how did you get customers? Tell us about your first couple of trips. Because you kind of invent, I don't know if you could say you invented that sector, but adventure travel didn't exist, you said.
Well, not like it is now. No, that's true. And look, I certainly make no claims about inventing anything. I don't think so. But I suppose in terms of carving out a new space in the travel industry, we probably did do that. And so, I'd like to say we're geniuses and it all went really well, but the reality is it didn't. We put half of our startup capital into a physical travel brochure. There was no internet then, pre-internet, pre-email, long time ago. Distributed that travel brochure around travel agencies, knocked on doors, blah, blah, blah. The reality is most travel agents weren't interested in the space at that time. So you put a couple of ads in newspapers, remember those?
Wow.
And you got a few phone calls, but we were just having a talk before about the virtues of Facebook and Google and whatnot in terms of advertising. Well, let me tell you, newspapers were worse even then, let alone what they are now. And so, the very first year we chewed up all of our startup capital, which admittedly was only $20,000, but even still, it all gone.
Yeah, that's decent.
And that's right.
Back in those days.
Yeah. Thanks. And the first year we took 47 travellers, so it was hardly a great, a roaring success. The next year We went and put a new trip together in addition to the first one, got up to 150 travellers, the next 500 travellers, etc., etc. And so just, gradually grew. But the first three, in fact, I remember a lunch with Manch in year 4, and his kind of opening line was just, "Isn't it going well? It's going really well." He'd been leading trips most of the time in Thailand, and he's just kind of come back and I said, "Well, yeah, it's kind of going well in that we've really got some growth going.
Yeah.
But my wallet's still empty, and I've got a kid now, and things have changed, and I'm not earning enough money, buddy. And we've got to really work out whether this is going to work." And I think he was a little shocked because even year 4, I was earning a third of what I was in my previous job.
Yeah, wow.
It wasn't enough. So it was slow. It was really slow. And fortunately, that growth momentum maintained. And, I guess the rest is history to a certain extent.
Okay, so just to give our audience a perspective, where is Intrepid at now? You used to be Peak.
Intrepid is now a group,
Yeah.
if you like. So there's Intrepid Travel, which is a tour operating brand, which for all the world does exactly what we've always done.
Yeah.
Small group, adventure holidays, off the beaten path, very immersive, etc. Over the years, we've either started or acquired a whole heap of other businesses as well.
Yep.
Some of which are highly complementary, some of which are more kind of competitive space, but because you own them, it doesn't matter, they're catering for new and different markets. But all of what we do is largely in the experiential adventure kind of, let's get out there, have some fun, do some stuff.
Gotcha.
Nice.
And are you able to give some numbers around that? Or
So what, first year, what was 47 travellers or whatever. This year, I think it's 350,000 travellers or something.
Yeah, wow.
So our turnover is about 300 million or so. So it's still just the two of us owning it. We had a listed company as a shareholder for about 4 years, as you'll well remember.
Yeah.
Only about 4 months ago, we bought them out. It just wasn't quite working. I think they were good people, and it was just a different culture clash. And so whereas my partner and I have always been on the same page, this shareholder was listed on the FTSE in the UK, so it was very short term. Financially focused, high short-term return, very low risk tolerance. None of those things are bad. It's just not where we're coming from. We tend to take a longer-term view. We tend to see financial returns as an output, not as an input, if you like.
Yes.
And we don't mind taking a bit of a risk. If we want to go and say, let's go and have a look at China, or let's go and have a look at this new destination or new product category. Play with it, just like probably 98% of your listeners and readers do. You just got to have a bit of a crack at things, don't you?
That's right. Like, what are your thoughts on risk? I tend to say that I'm quite risk adverse. I like calculated risk. How about you?
Yeah, look, I think it's not so much whether you're risk averse or not. It's really understanding your appetite for risk. So it's slightly different. So just when you look at an opportunity, you try to say, okay, let's look at this. Is the likelihood of return good or bad? Is it? And so therefore you can look at that and say, okay, I can do that. I can absorb that. I can take that on board or whatever. So and so I guess my appetite for risk is moderately high. Having said that, we'd never bet the farm.
Yeah.
So you have a bit of a crack at something new.
Yes.
But you don't put all your money into it or whatever, because it's just crazy. That's just stupid. But to a certain extent, if you don't try new things, you're never going to grow.
You can't rest on your laurels.
And to a certain extent, you're going to get bored as well. It's kind of fun doing new stuff.
That's right. It's exciting.
I don't have to anymore, and maybe I should just go and live on a beach or something. But hell, I'd be bored in 10 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. So I find it fascinating that 4 years in, you had that conversation with Manch. I find that really interesting. When did you guys start to get like that hockey stick type growth, and what kept you going?
So I guess the part of the problem was we're just reinvesting every single cent in the business.
Yep.
And so that's one of the reasons it was growing nicely, and that's one of the reasons I guess Manch was thinking it's going so well, because we just kept investing. And so we did that, but I suppose it was after that period of time where we just said, okay, well, let's at least pay ourselves a semi-decent salary. A couple of years later, you got a dividend, I think, for the first time, and so then it's fine. But in essence, we're still reinvesting. And so it wasn't a hockey stick in terms of growth, but, every year you're growing between 30 and 60%. And,
okay, that's good.
And so, on a compound basis, that starts to add up pretty quickly,
And what do you think fueled that besides just like sheer grit, momentum, fueling, reinvesting?
A bit of momentum, yes. I think at the end of the day, you've got to look at what your client proposition is. And I think, we did touch the market to the degree that clients had a bloody great holiday. And at the end of the day, if whatever you're doing isn't as good as it can be, you don't really deserve to exist, and you're certainly not going to grow.
Yeah.
So we just kept saying, okay, look, if our financials vaguely stack up and we keep giving people the best holiday they've ever had, we'll probably do okay as a company. And sure enough, that's what we did do. So you just keep concentrating on, improving your itineraries, tweaking things here and there, training your staff, doing whatever it is to make sure that, that particular trip is good fun.
Gotcha.
And so largely it's word of mouth driving the business model ultimately. And, I'm probably our marketing guy, but I used to really annoy a lot of our marketing stuff because I'd say, guys, no matter how clever we think we are in terms of the ads that we design or the strategies we bring to market or whatever, we know most of the people who are traveling on our trips are doing so because they've had a friend or they've had a travel agent who said, hey, these guys at Intrepid, they're pretty good. They do good trips, So it's not our genius. Bugger.
But you have a good focus on product then?
For sure.
Yeah, obsessive focus on product.
Arguably still do.
Yeah.
We often have this conversation at a leadership team level, still 27 years later, and some would argue that we're too obsessive about product.
Really?
Now, and we should be more obsessive about the customer. However, if you're obsessive about product, why? Because you want to make it as great as you can for the customer. So I'm not sure that it's that much different, really.
Yeah, it's just about the experience because,
It's really, we're tour operators. We're not creating
selling
equipment.
phones, yeah.
We're not creating phones or, there's no hardware to it. There's no real IP to it. It's really just that emotional piece that we've got to consistently deliver. It's not even the quality of hotels or transport or anything like that. That's just logistics. For an operator like us, it's all around delivering those joyous, special moments of travel. So everyone goes, oh, fuck, I can't believe I've just done this, or this is great, or, I'm so glad I'm here. This is the best thing,
Yeah, those wow moments.
Those wow moments, and it's all about that. And so, everything we do is to do that. Now, you can't manufacture that. All you can do is kind of almost like a chaos theory, put a whole lot of stuff together, and those wow moments start to happen. But it's that's our IP almost as a business. But you do that through product development and staff development and so forth.
Gotcha. So you said you're a marketing guy. I know marketing's been always a passion piece of yours. Do you have like 3 action items that you can give?
Oh, you could have given me this question in advance.
Well, just hit us with some really like solid things that have always held you in good stead. Like I know you told me, this is a really interesting story. I remember you told me one day that you went on this big holiday and you reckon that's where you come up with your best ideas.
Yeah.
And you come back and you came up with this idea for the blog. And this is when blogging wasn't big, and I absolutely crushed it. You told me you got like so many, I can't remember how big your email list was, but when
I went off, we just started this, email newsletter as it was.
Yeah.
And, I think we had we got it to a couple of thousand or something like that. And then I took 3.5 months off to go traveling with the family.
Yeah.
And, just kind of thinking about it a little bit more when I was away. And then I got back and I thought, oh, bugger it, I'm going to do this thing myself and really have a bit of a play with it.
Yeah.
And, we got it up to 180,000 people in kind of, I think it was only a couple of months or something.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those step changes. So, every now and then you have step changes as a business. One of our first really significant ones was, it actually goes back to newspapers.
Yeah.
It was about year 3, and we just started looking at Vietnam. So Vietnam this is in 1992. Vietnam was in other words, closed. There'd been a war there only 15 years earlier or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And not a destination at all. But it was just starting to open up. Cracks were emerging and we knew we could do something there. put a couple of staff up there, got vague itineraries together to run a trip, and then a well-known author released a 4 or 5 page article in a Good Weekend colour supplement in a paper.
Yep.
And saw the article on Vietnam, and great article just about how things are changing and the emerging and all that. And I said, okay, this is a go moment. And so the very next weekend, in the same magazine, we took a double page spread in that to advertise one trip to Vietnam. And so, a couple of people in the business were going, what the hell are we doing? And I said, I'm not quite sure, but I think it could work. Not a great premise, but it did work. And because people had seen that article a week before, that kind of magazine, people read it every week at that time.
Yeah.
And so then they saw the ad there. Fortunately, I got a distressed rate on the ad because it was last minute.
Yeah.
And we got hundreds of calls. We booked 72 passengers off the back of that particular ad, which way more than paid for itself. And it was just that step change. And sometimes, and so I'm not sure if I've got 3 things or not.
Yeah, just give some best practices.
But I think one of the things you can do is go where others aren't. So, sometimes you've got to put your kind of balls on the line a little bit and say, okay, there's an opportunity here. Don't know whether it's going to work. You'd like to test it and validate it or whatever. Sometimes you just can't. In those stages, that ad was $20,000. That was a shitload of money. It was my annual marketing budget.
Wow.
I put the whole marketing budget for the year on one ad in one paper on one day.
Yeah.
Could have been stupid.
Yeah.
Turned out okay. Bit lucky perhaps, but I think sometimes you've just got to do that and got to make a bit of a splash. And if one of the things that I often find about our business, but a lot of businesses I look at, they try to be too many things to too many people. And particularly in a marketing context, you do a bit of Google and a bit of Facebook, and then you do a blog, and then you try and do this, and then you try and do that, and you're probably not doing any of them particularly well. See if you can find something that you actually are pretty good at. It's an uncluttered space, ideally, and then you can own it and stand out, and it's, it's the billboard theory almost, that, do something, do it so people go, "Whew, wow, that's big," or whatever.
Yeah, that actually sits really well with me, because that's kind of like, how we found Instagram, and that's been an amazing customer acquisition channel for us.
So you've just taken off over that.
Almost 500,000 followers in just over a year.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, tens of thousands, almost hundreds of thousands of email subscribers. It's been crazy, generous, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's, find something different. Do it well. You got to do it well though.
Yeah.
That's the
focus.
Let's never forget that if you do something half-assed, it's just not going to work for you. And whether it's your core product, like us as a tour operator, or whether it's a piece of marketing or whatever, it's easy to just throw stuff out there, but it's just not going to work unless it sings. It's really got to talk to people.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Darrell, that I don't know. I know you're going to be super humble about it, and this is something that.
No, I'm a genius.
This is something that I've found amongst you as an entrepreneur, and it's something that I aspire to be like as well. Is you're always extremely humble, and I think you don't you've had some massive wins. You're a super successful guy, but how do you stay so humble? How do you stay so level-headed?
Partly it's because people only notice what you're successful at, but of course I notice the things that I'm not successful at. So you're only telling half the story here. You are concentrating on what's worked for us as business, right?
Yeah.
I happen to know there's a whole shitload of stuff that we'd really rather not talk about.
Can you tell us about a couple
that hasn't worked out?
Tell us some good ones.
So, I can't add up, for instance. I'm useless on finances. And when we had this listed company on our books, we'd have quarterly board meetings with them. And it's just page after page after page of spreadsheets and PowerPoint financial presentations and all that. And I'm just useless at it, And so, but we tend not to talk about that kind of stuff. We tend not to talk about the business that you started and you put, $500,000 into or something and disappeared in, 3 months or whatever. And you think, okay, so much for that one. So it's from my perspective, it's I know I get heaps wrong, so it's not hard to, how can you be anything but humble if you like?
But still, Darrell, I think, not anybody can achieve the kind of things that you've done, that you and Mitch have created with Intrepid. I'm
not entirely sure about that.
Really?
I actually think to a certain extent anyone can do it, but not anyone does. Now, that's different. So some people don't, for whatever reason, have the courage, they don't have the desire, whatever it is. But I'm not sure that a lot of people can't do stuff. It's just that they tend not to. Or they're too scared.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, people are way too scared.
But, like I was saying to you a couple of years ago, what's the worst that can go wrong? Not that much. You have a crack at something, doesn't work, big whoop. Get over it. Get over yourself. It's only getting over yourself, isn't it? No one else could really give a damn.
Yeah, that's right. That's so true. Okay, well, you really shook that one up. I didn't expect that answer, but okay, let's talk about leadership, because that's something I think you're really good at too. What advice?
You're only saying the good bits, aren't you? It's the same story.
Okay, like leading a team. Like what can we learn from your experience?
Yeah. Well, I'm unsure as to whether I am good or not, but even still, take that as a premise, if you like, that I've done okay, obviously. I think for me the biggest part about a team is, I guess the first thing is, it's a bit like a product or marketing or whatever. Make sure you've got something to work with. You've got to have good people there in the first place. Yeah. And if you haven't got good people there, it's really difficult to lead a team, because at the end of the day, a group of people needs respect above everything else. You've got to have mutual respect in that group of people in the room. So if you've got a degree of respect in the room, then it's really easy to lead, because you can gather thoughts and gather thinking and work it through as a team, and that team will be reasonably happy deferring to you in a leadership role to say, if there's, we could go one or two ways and you only can go one way, at that point I might say, okay, let's go this way. Or I might say, you know what, I don't know which way is the best way. Let's work it out collectively. And I think you do that a few times, people get more and more respect for your style, you work well together, generally speaking, because you're getting the best ideas possible. The results will be pretty good, because five brains is better than one. And so you're harnessing those brains in a constructive, positive, forward-looking way. And it starts to work. And so once it starts to work, it becomes a reinforcing, self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you're working with a group of people who have confidence and have faith in themselves and have faith in you as a leader, I suppose, but really it's an internally built faith that starts to just propagate the future. It works.
I see. And
so, but again, it's built off luck and success. Let's say for a second that evaporated, then I can equally imagine there'd be a negative feedback loop that goes the other way. And you see that in some businesses too, where they're floundering for whatever reason, and leadership doesn't help. We acquired a business about 5 years ago, and it was a shocking bloody business. It was a terrible business, and no amount of love or effort or leadership could turn that around. And they weren't bad people, but it was just all sorts of things wrong with that, and we couldn't get the bloody thing to work. Shocking.
Gotcha. So what about culture? Because when I worked at Intrepid, I had a really good time. It was so much fun, and one thing that I can always take away from that experience was that you're always on the there was no hierarchy, and everyone was really friendly. And if you could always have a chat with someone. If anyone needed a hand, there would always somebody be there to help you. And it was
but
very
it's 2015,
environment.
Isn't it? I mean, everyone spends a lot of time working. So if you're going to go to a place and spend a lot of hours there, you want to be with people you like or vaguely respect and enjoy their company and all that. So it doesn't mean that you have to go to your desk and sit behind your cubicle and do nothing but work. Well, one, it's probably not very productive work anyway. But two, it's not what you want to do in life. You want to have a bit of a chat. You want to have a cup of coffee. You want to, throw around ideas and stuff like that. So it seems to me just common sense to say, well, yeah, enjoy work. If you're not enjoying work and not thinking, yeah, it's good, don't come to work. Or find somewhere you do like, more to the point, So our workplace is our workplace, another one is another one. And, we'll have a certain style or whatever, which will suit certain people, but it won't suit others. If there's a super high-performing, aggressive finance type who just wants incredibly aspirational and all the rest of it, they're probably never going to fit in our organisation. That's cool, because there's lots of other organisations where they will,
So have you spent a lot of time developing the culture ever since the beginning, or is that something that kind of manifested?
Look, in the early days, definitely did, and I can't say I have really in the last few years.
Yeah.
And indeed, I kind of think if anything, it's probably not as good as it used to be. But when you've got a few hundred or a few thousand people working in your organisation, it is much harder to keep your finger on the pulse with culture. Culture's a funny thing. And arguably, we perhaps haven't invested enough in culture in the last few years, although interestingly enough, the last 6 to 9 months has been very positive in the sense because you can take your pulse of your culture.
Gotcha.
Sorry, where was the question going?
I guess in terms of when you first started on your working on your culture.
Yeah, so early days it was super critical, but
what did you do? What did you do? That's what I'm curious. What did you do?
I think
it's a long time ago now,
isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a long time ago, and I say we worked hard on it, but I don't know that it's hard by design. I think it was more hard because it's just the kind of workplace I wanted to work in.
Yeah.
So I'd had a couple of jobs where I didn't actually enjoy going to work.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, I want to have my own company. That's fine for me as a shareholder.
Yes.
But I also want to work with people I want to work with and all that. And I wanted them to enjoy working. Now, being in the travel space, it kind of helps because people are coming and going and you're always talking about stuff that you love anyway. So it's kind of good like that. But you just got to think, well, hell, it's you and I might have a beer later on, and I quite like having a beer in the afternoon. So, some days you just get the beers out at, in the early days you get out the beers at 12:30 or something and you're having a few beers in the office and that's kind of good and, it's slow, the phones aren't ringing, it's like a beer.
Yeah.
And that just builds fun, and then some days you really hit it hard or other days, but flip side is, other days there's work on and you're bloody there till 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, whatever it takes. And those same guys who you're skiving off having a beer with on 2 weeks ago, you're all putting in, and that's culture.
Yeah.
It's not just about the good times. It's about when you've just got a job to get done and everyone knuckles down and really does it.
Gotcha. Because I think that's a really fine line to have this kind of relaxed culture, but then when the chips are down or when you expect people to work, you push them
I don't
to
think
work.
it's a fine line. No, I don't quite agree because I think it's a personal pride issue. Most people in the world actually want to feel good about what they do. And so if they're doing a job, they actually want to feel like, and it's not a leadership job. It might be, in your case, fixing computers and stuff, but you think, hey, this guy's got a problem with their work or their computer or whatever. I want to try and help them. Yeah. And you want to walk away from that thinking you've made a difference, and that's most people when they come to work, they want to do that. And so in that sense, it's just harnessing that, isn't it? And it's just saying to people, you be yourself, you be comfortable in the kind of person you want to be, and hopefully that fits our collective culture, but we still want you to be a great person and we still want you to do great work. And if you just rock up because you want to have a yak to people or a beer in the afternoon or something like that, no, that's not how it works. There's a collective responsibility, but we want you to be great, and you might want to do this job this time, but down the track, you know what, you might want to go and do something completely different. As you would know, we have people a fair degree of mobility, so someone in finance might be in IT, or they might be in marketing, or they might go over and work in one of a company in Kenya or Peru or whatever, and that mobility is really nice. And it suits a lot of people these days that they want to have a broader experience, either geographically or culturally or skill set or whatever it is. Or some others just like to say, okay, well, I'm an accountant, I'll get a job as a bookkeeper, and then I'll go up. And if a company is growing, then you can satisfy that kind of person as well. So that's why it's one of the reasons why I love growth. I'm a growth junkie because it, apart from the fact that it keeps me engaged in terms of mentally, it also keeps people see opportunities. So whilst a company is growing, there's always places you can go. As soon as a company stopped growing, the lid's there, managers aren't moving on, so therefore people below managers aren't moving on. Yeah, you can move laterally, but it's harder. If the whole pool is growing, it's much easier to move around in an organisation, and so therefore satisfy your, people's natural curiosity about growth.
Gotcha. Look, we have to work towards wrapping up. A couple more questions. When it comes to growth, how do you identify how do you identify these leverage points? or areas that you could scale up?
Oh, look, sometimes it's accidental. Sometimes it's purpose. I read a lot.
Yeah,
an awful lot, and so I've never been a particularly hard worker. Still aren't. So I always used to get home at 5:30 at night and work at night, but I'd read, and then I travel a lot. So I usually take about 3 months a year holiday, and I read quite a lot in there, and you just think about stuff when you're traveling too, or I'm famous for having baths. I'll sit in a bath for 2 hours with a glass of wine and just kind of contemplate the universe type stuff. Other times you do it a little bit more scientifically, and you actually kind of say, okay, where are the opportunities? And so in terms of source markets, maybe where do I see the next big lot of travellers coming from? Be it a geography or a demographic or a culture base or growing source markets. Is it new product categories that we could get into that we aren't in at the moment that would still suit our core competence? Is there lateral fields that are related to what we do, but we're not in at the moment? And, so you start to look at it and then you start to quantify it and try and build up a business case around it. So, it's that half accidental kind of just reading, thinking, exposure stuff, and then half more disciplined approach, taking a disciplined strategic approach to growth opportunities. So it's a little bit of both, and I think both is good.
Gotcha. Any game-changing books you'd recommend? You recommended The Lean Startup to me. That's
really?
Yeah, you recommended
Hey, that wasn't bad, was it?
That was a good one. Any game changers that people you think, our audience, aspiring, novice stage, early stage startup founders?
It's not new book now, but that Peter Thiel book, 0 to 1.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that one.
Yeah, just got to. It's just a stunning book.
Yep.
No, he's such a great thinker. I'm not sure I'd want to work for him or with him, but he's an outstanding thinker. So that's probably the book of the last 12 months, I think, in your space, if you like. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, look, where's the best place people can find you, Darrell?
Well, I'm in New York next week, and I'm looking next year in April. I'm heading off to the Caucasus. Do you even know where that is? Oh, come on,
mate! This is when I ask that question. This is the time when you plug your stuff.
Gee, I'm a bit slow. I know. So, I'm not. So the Caucasus is Azerbaijan and Armenia and Georgia, right?
Okay.
I'm not sure we're going to sell hundreds of thousands of travellers to that destination, but I tell you what, I'm bloody excited about going there. So I've got a few weeks there.
Okay, wow.
And then I'm walking in Portugal for 3 weeks in late May. And then what are we doing? Lots of going skiing in Japan in February. So there's a bit.
You live a good life.
Yeah, it's not bad. I can't complain. I have to say I've been very lucky.
Okay, one last question. You're telling me that you said if I found something interesting, you said you're not a very hard worker. So you're saying that when you started the business or during this whole period, you've never done like 80-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks, 50-hour weeks?
No. Look. Sure. I'm sure I have done an 80-hour week. Yes. Yeah. But it's not something I admire, and it's certainly not something I do usually. Yeah. No. Look. Periodically, you got to put it in, but it's very rare, and I hate it with a passion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You like chilling out by sounds of it.
Yeah.
Relaxing and traveling.
Yeah. No, that's right. Absolutely. And I also find I think I'm not very capable, because after a few hours, my brain goes to mush, and my quality of thinking isn't as good as it used to be. I don't mean used to be, as in you do 8 hours, that's enough. Your brain's tired. If you're really thinking for 8 hours, that's a fair bit. You can't think for bloody 18 hours, or you think you can, but you're not. And sometimes you reflect on some of the work you're doing, and it's not as good as it should be. And I've always found that. And you can do 2 or 3 days that are really super hard, and particularly if you're on sales roadshows and things like that, and you're skipping around all over the place, and you're really putting in. But it's just the quality of thinking isn't always as good as it should be.
Okay, gotcha. So if anyone wants to do an adventure travel trip, intrepidtravel.com.
Thank you very much. That's a plug. You're much better at this than me.
Awesome. All right, we'll wrap there.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.